Coming up on the hunt for amazing treasures. It took them years to find it, a wreck holding an enormous cache of gold bullion. But could it be recovered from the deep ocean floor?
Cape Finisterre on the northwest coast of Spain. The sea lanes here are considered to be the most treacherous in the world. This is a graveyard of broken and sunken ships and the site of a classic tale of treasure. It was here on the night of April 2nd, 1882, that the Royal Mail steamship Douro was struck by a Spanish liner bound for Havana, Cuba. The Reuters report, carried in the April 5th edition of the London Times, confirmed the loss of the Douro, 39 of her passengers, and all of her cargo. The Douro was carrying coffee from Brazil, but she also had on board a shipment of 28,000 gold sovereigns, as well as a large amount of gold bullion. The loss of this much treasure would have triggered an immediate salvage operation, but in 1882 there was no technology for retrieving anything from the depth the ship sank to, over 1,500 feet. So the Douro and her cargo lay forgotten for the next 100 years. Forgotten until a note came to the attention of professional shipwreck researcher Nigel Pickford.
I came across this note in my father's diary, just a pencil note in which he just scribbled Douro, 1st of April 1882.
Nigel's father, Charles, had also made a career of researching shipwrecks and had made a notation on the Douro.
He'd obviously followed it up and decided that it was far too deep to be salvageable. But when I came across this a good number of years later, I thought, it might be worth having another look at. It turned out to be more interesting than I guessed it would be.
With new technology that was beginning to make deep water recoveries possible, Nigel decided to continue his father's research. On and off for the next 10 years, he plowed through old newspapers, logbooks, ship registries, and many, many charts.
It's a kind of historical detection work. You all the time you're following a trail of clues. You move from one place to another. One thing leads to another.
But even more important than the wreck's location, Pickford had to absolutely verify the existence of the gold.
You need, obviously, to do a lot of work on the cargo, because you want to be sure that what you're going for really exists.
And then he found what he was looking for.
I managed to find in some original banking records that there were £30,000 worth of sovereigns on board. We were able to be confident that the vast majority of the cargo was gold.
Now, with the existence of the gold cargo confirmed, Nigel turned to a well-known Swedish treasure hunter, Sverker Hallström.
It started with he turned over his research. I studied it. And I call him and say, look, this looks interesting. I think I would like to look for this one.
But Hallström knew there were still questions to be answered before he could commit to the project.
Each project has different criteria, but everything has to fit in. First of all, is the treasure there? And if you feel convinced the treasure is there, can I find it? So I have to look concentrating on the search area. What search area would I feel confident with?
The challenges were immense. Up until that time, a cargo of gold had never been recovered from inside a collapsed and rusting iron hull. And the search area contained many other unidentified wrecks from the same era.
The Bay of Biscay has always been a bad place for shipwrecks because weather conditions are pretty horrendous there.
Costa de la Muerte means actually the coast of death. So there is many, many hundreds of wrecks there.
Although Nigel Pickford had targeted a general area where the Douro sank, it was up to Sverker to actually find it.
I have to put it together. I have to put out the course, what course did the Rurok Bat have? What course did the Douro have?
When it comes to determining a search area, he would go through all the evidence and I would go through all the evidence and we'd discuss it and, come up with a search area where we thought it had to be.
In fact, the search area was almost 100 square miles. There was also one last issue to resolve. If they did find the Douro, would they also be able to salvage her?
I felt strongly that should I find a wreck, somehow I will get up the gold.
In 1995, while Nigel was still researching, the technology for deep water recoveries was moving fast. Sverker knew if they found the ship, there was every chance for a successful recovery. The very next summer, he took to sea and began the search for the Douro.
I know that one of the best parts with shipwrecks is that they don't run away. They stay where they are until they find them. It's not like, you know, they're there one day and gone the next. That's the beauty of it.
After days of searching the bottom, they catch sight of what might be a ship's bell.
I really want to find something, you know, and that's not easy. In the end, it's, you know, off the seabed, a little bit in the seabed, sticks up a little bit only of something. We dig around there, and it turned out to be the ship's bell. It was right at the top of the ship's bell. And we maneuvering around and managed to get that bell in a manipulator.
The Remote Observation Vehicle, or ROV, slowly rises to the surface.
And you can imagine the interest, you know, of reading on that bell the name of the ship. I hope for is going to be Douro. When the bell came up, obviously it was very interesting to see, was this a Douro or was it not? It was not.
Disappointed but undeterred, Sverker continues to look at other wrecks littering the designated search area. But fishnets snagged onto the wreckage are an ever-present danger for the ROV, which could easily become ensnared and lost. Then, sitting there alone on the sandy bottom, a white china bowl. As the ROV draws closer, they can make out an insignia, not quite visible. But it does look like the stylish lion and unicorn crest of the Royal Mail Steam Packet Company. Could this be from the Douro? Had Sverker finally located the elusive wreck? This bowl could tell them, and it was up to the ROV and its mechanical arm to retrieve it.
Now we decide to go up, take the ROV, and see if we can see something. We start getting up, and we got it in that sort of little basket. And then we start going up to the surface, but a few 100 feet off the seabed, this thing falls out. And we go down again, and we are searching again, and searching again, and searching again, and then bang, we see it. And this time we were lucky, and we saw sort of a logo on it, and we zoomed in on it, and then we could see very clearly that it was from the Douro. Years of search and bad weather, just name it, was over. We could see this mark here, and it was full of mud up to here, so we could only see Royal Mail, and we see the logo, we see the horse, so we know this is the right ship, this is the Douro.
They had finally found the Douro, but celebration quickly gave way to the real challenge, a deep water recovery that was way beyond anything Sverker had ever attempted. Because of the extreme depth of the wreck, Sverker and Nigel took on a third partner, Blue Water Recovery, the owner of a highly sophisticated ship, the Deep Sea Worker. Blue Water had retrofitted the ship for underwater recoveries. It boasted a highly accurate satellite navigation system which could hold the ship in position above the wreck. But the key was the enormous mechanical grab, which they could lower to the wreck for the salvaging operation itself.
We did consider all sorts of different options for recovering the cargo, but when the possibility of using that came up, it definitely seemed like a favoured one. It has a pulling power of over 100 tons, and it can if needs be, pull a ship apart. And with a ship like the Douro, you didn't really have to pull it apart because, as I say, it was an iron ship and the iron was very, very corroded.
There was still one thing they needed to know. Where exactly on board the Douro was the gold?
The total size of the gold cargo was not much bigger than a suitcase full. So you need to know where to, having found your ship is only the beginning of the solution.
Where was the gold? It could be something like 1 day salvage to like 30 days, or maybe much more. We didn't know.
They knew the gold was kept in a strong room, but where in the 300-foot-long ship was it located?
We didn't know where the bullion room was. We could only guess from drawings from other ships.
They studied the blueprints of the Nile, a ship the same size as the Douro and built in the same shipyard. Was it possible the strong rooms in both ships could be in the same location? The giant grab was lowered down. It started bringing up loads of wreckage, dumping it on deck. The location turned out to be exactly right. Poking out from the mud were shiny gold sovereigns, dozens of them. Then they started to be found in clumps. It wasn't long after that the first gold bars started to appear. Remarkably, it took the deep-sea worker only 2 days to recover over 90% of the treasure, 28,000 gold sovereigns and almost 200 gold bars. Under the ancient law of salvage at sea, the treasure was deposited with the receiver of wreck. It would be held for a year and a day, giving any owners an opportunity to come forward and claim the cargo. All kinds of debris was brought up with the Douro's treasure, from portals to decorative brass to intact dinner service. But it was the gold sovereigns they were after, and it was the gold sovereigns that went to public auction at Spinks, a coin specialist in London.
80, 94, 96.
The Douro was an absolute success. It was a total success.
Although the auction netted $2.3 million from the coins alone, Sverker gets a lot more out of this than the money.
I am a treasure hunter, if you will, and I will always be that. I don't think there is any other work which can interest me after this profession.